My name is Olivia Brooks. I'm 27. And last night my brother laughed in my face because I wasn't invited to my own parents' anniversary party. Not just any party. A black tie celebration they'd been planning for months without bothering to mention it to their difficult daughter. I found out the way people find out about everything now. Through my phone. A notification popped up, and there he was on video, grinning in a crowded ballroom. "Big night for Mom and Dad," he said, tilting the camera so I could see everyone raising their glasses. Then he lowered his voice, all mock sympathy. "Crazy thing though, your name's not on the seating chart." Again. I hung up before he could hear my voice crack. Being sidelined wasn't new, but watching it turned into a joke snapped whatever patience I had left. I stared at his message and at the smug little thumbnail of the hotel where they were celebrating, and a thought hit me so hard it felt reckless. Fine, keep your perfect party. I'll throw my own. I opened a map, zoomed in on their hotel, and searched venue listings with shaking hands until I saw it. An industrial loft in the building right next door, available the same night. I didn't think about my savings or how insane it was to plan a rival party in 1 week. I just thought about the relatives they'd forgotten, the friends they'd pushed away, and how it would feel to watch their guests slip out, one by one, to come find me instead. Before I tell you what he said next, and how it all exploded when our parties collided, tell me, what time is it where you are? And where are you watching from? Step 1. Find a place loud enough to drown out decades of being talked over. The morning after that video call, I sat at my tiny kitchen table in my Chicago apartment, laptop open, coffee gone cold, staring at the confirmation email from the brick loft next to the Lakeshore Grand Hotel. My heart hammered in my chest. The subject line read, "Booking confirmed, Saturday, 7 p.m. Underneath it was the price, a number so big it practically screamed, "Are you out of your mind, Olivia?" I was a freelance graphic designer, not some corporate executive with a bonus to burn. My savings were supposed to be for emergencies, not for declaring war on my own family. But if this wasn't an emergency, what was? I opened a fresh document and typed "Party War Plan" at the top. Underneath, I started a list. 1. Make guest list. 2. Find food and drinks. Cheap but not embarrassing. 3. Decorations that say, "We belong here." 4. Don't chicken out. Every name I wrote down for the guest list came with a memory. Aunt Denise, who once drove 3 hours to my college art show, only to have my parents leave early because Ethan's networking dinner was more important. Cousin Tara, who got uninvited from a family Christmas after she called out a rude comment from my father. The older neighbors who used to bring us cookies but somehow stopped getting invited to anything once we moved up. The more names I added, the more I realized how many people had quietly disappeared from family events over the years. It wasn't just about me. It was about anyone who hadn't fit the polished picture my parents were selling. Have you ever scrolled through your contacts and realized half your family only calls when they need something? I started sending messages. "Hey, it's Olivia. I know this is last minute and kind of wild, but I'm hosting a get-together next Saturday in a loft downtown, same night as my parents' anniversary at the Lakeshore Grand. You weren't on their list either, right? Come to mine. No dress code, no pretending." Within minutes, my phone lit up. Tara replied first. "Wait, they didn't invite you either?" "I'm in. 100%. Then, "I heard about their party through Facebook. Honestly thought I was the only one they left out." A wave of, "I thought it was just me," messages rolled in, turning my anger into something sharper, more focused. This wasn't just petty revenge. This was a gathering of the overlooked. That afternoon, my best friend Jenna Park let herself into my apartment without knocking, tossing her bag on the couch. "You looked like you were about to set something on fire in your texts. What happened?" she asked, pulling out a notebook. Jenna worked nights managing a bar in Logan Square and knew more about running events than my parents' entire friend group. When I told her about the video, about the loft, about how their guest list was basically a mirror reflecting the same handful of approved relatives, she didn't call me dramatic. She smirked. "So you're throwing a rival party next door to the Brooks family show?" she said. "Finally, I've been waiting years for you to snap." We spread my lists out across the table. Jenna scribbled ideas in the margins. Playlist people can actually dance to. DIY photo corner with messy, real family pics. Mic for toasts that aren't scripted. While she talked logistics, I thought about my brother's face on that video. Ethan Brooks, 30 years old, star senior associate at some big-name law firm, the guy my parents introduced as our pride and joy. The guy who once turned my college graduation dinner into a celebration of his internship. I could already hear him. "Seriously, Liv? You're making a scene." But that was the point. For once, the scene would be mine. Late that night, when Jenna left and the apartment fell quiet, I stared at my dwindling bank balance and thought about backing out. What if no one came? What if my parents found out and decided I'd finally confirmed their favorite story about me being ungrateful and too emotional? What if this party turned into proof that I really was as alone as they made me feel? Then another text came in from a relative I barely knew. "Heard you're throwing something Saturday. Thank you for thinking of us. It's nice to be remembered." I looked at that message for a long time. Maybe I wasn't just starting a party. Maybe I was starting a rebellion. By Saturday, Chicago felt like it was buzzing just for them. The Lakeshore Grand's Instagram story showed florists hauling in white roses, staff polishing glassware, planners fussing over table settings with gold chargers and name cards. I watched it all from my phone as I sat cross-legged on the loft's concrete floor, cables and extension cords spread around me like battle lines. "Stop doom-scrolling their party," Jenna said, swatting the phone out of my hand. "We have our own chaos to build." The loft smelled faintly of paint and old wood, exposed brick walls, high ceilings, big windows overlooking the same street where my parents' guests would be dropped off from black cars. No chandeliers, no monogrammed ice sculpture. Just string lights we were hanging ourselves and rented folding chairs Jenna insisted we could make look intentional. We draped cheap but decent-looking linens over mismatched tables and taped up printed photos I'd dug up from old hard drives. Not the polished family portraits my mom posted every holiday, but the messy snapshots, cousins in pajamas, backyard cookouts, the time Tara and I tried to bake a cake and nearly set the oven on fire. "I forgot this day," Tara said quietly when she arrived early to help, a case of budget wine clinking in her arms. She pointed to a photo where she was mid-laugh, flower on her nose, my younger self leaning on her shoulder. "They never shared this one," I said. "Didn't fit the brand." My phone buzzed. A group chat my mom had made for Brooks' family event info pinged with another update I wasn't supposed to see. Someone had added me months ago and never removed me. A cousin wrote, "I'm at the hotel. No place card for Olivia, right?" Another replied with a shrug emoji and, "You know how it is." I swallowed hard. How it is. That was the problem. Ignore them, Jenna muttered, adjusting the small Bluetooth speaker we'd brought. Tonight, they're the ones missing out. Still, as the clock crawled toward 7, doubt slunk in. What if their gravity was stronger? What if people wanted the safe, polished version of family more than the messy, honest one I was offering? Would you leave the official party, the one with the fancy menu and open bar, for a loft full of people your family quietly pushed aside? Or would you stay where it's comfortable, even if it hurts? 7 o'clock came and went. No one. I paced between the food tables, trays of catered appetizers Jenna had bartered for by promising the restaurant free design work from me, bowls of chips, a DIY taco bar we'd arranged at the last minute. It's still early, Jenna said, checking her watch. Relax. People have to make an appearance at the hotel first. They have to be seen. 7, 10, 7, 15. My stomach twisted. Then the elevator dinged. The doors opened and 3 people stepped out, laughing nervously. I recognized them immediately. An older uncle who'd stopped getting invited to things after his divorce, his new wife, and their teenage daughter who'd never been invited to anything at all. We thought we'd be the only ones, he said, shrugging off his coat. But we heard words getting around. Words getting around. I glanced out the window. Down the block, I could see the hotel entrance glowing. A stream of guests moved in and out. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from a cousin. They seated us. Your name really isn't here. That sucks. After a pause. Send me your location. Within half an hour, more people arrived. Some had come straight to the loft, dressed in whatever they had. Others slipped in looking over their shoulders, clearly having snuck away from the hotel. One aunt confessed, I told them I needed some air. Another. Bathroom break turned field trip. Every time the elevator doors opened, a little more of the knot in my chest loosened. The laughter in the loft wasn't polite or staged. It was loud, overlapping, messy. People hugged like they didn't know when they'd get another chance. And the best part? No one asked, so what did Ethan do now? They asked, how are you, Olivia? What do you really want? Out the window, the hotel's facade glittered like a magazine cover. In here, with our borrowed tables and printed photos, it felt like real life. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I felt like the center of a story I was finally telling for myself. I just didn't know yet how far that story would push the rest of them. Around 9, the loft was in full swing. Music pulsed from Jenna's playlist, a chaotic mix of throwback tracks and songs people could actually dance to. Someone had started a conga line. Tara was teaching an aunt how to do a TikTok dance. The DIY photo corner we'd set up with a white sheet and a tripod had a constant line. People laughed as they held up handmade signs Jenna had lettered. Forgotten, but fun. Uninvited and thriving. Family by choice. I was mid-conversation with Tara about her overnight shifts when the air shifted. I didn't hear the elevator ding. I felt the silence roll in like a gust of wind. Conversations faded. Heads turned towards the door. There he was. Ethan Brooks, still in his tailored navy suit. Tie loosened just enough to look relaxed, but not sloppy. Hair perfect like the hotel had a stylist on call. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a LinkedIn post about work-life balance. Behind him, a few of my relatives lingered uncertainly, half in the hallway, half in the room. His eyes swept the loft, the strings of lights, the crowded food table, the people who were supposed to be clapping for my parents at the hotel, before landing on me. Well, he said, voice smooth and carrying. I leave the main party for an hour and find this. The way he said this, like it was a mess he was about to clean up, made my jaw tighten. Nice turnout, Liv. I didn't realize you were trying to host a competing event. Bold move. It's not competing, I said, forcing my shoulders to relax. It's separate, different guest list. You know, the people who didn't make the cut. A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the room. Ethan gave a tight smile. You really think turning this into a spectacle helps anything? Mom is in tears upstairs. Dad's furious. You could have just talked to them. Talked to them? The words burst out of me. Like the time I tried to explain why it hurt when they forgot to invite me to your law school graduation dinner, or the time I found out from Facebook they'd thrown you a surprise promotion party. His jaw clenched. Those were misunderstandings. Funny how the misunderstandings always leave me out of the picture, I said. This was clear enough. You video called me specifically to rub it in." He shrugged, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes. "Guilt?" "I was trying to be funny," he said. "You know how we joke." "Do you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "When was the last time the joke was on you, Ethan?" The question hung in the air like a spotlight. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the golden child had to stand in a room full of people and hear, out loud, how much their privilege cost everyone else? A voice from the crowd broke the tension. Uncle Mark, one of the first to arrive, stepped forward. "We came because Olivia invited us," he said calmly. "Nobody upstairs remembered our names until tonight." Another aunt chimed in. "Honestly, Ethan, it's the first time in years I've felt like a Brooks event wasn't just a performance." Ethan's gaze flicked toward them, then back to me. "You're turning them against Mom and Dad," he accused softly. "Do you really want to be that person?" "I'm not turning anyone," I said. "They're just seeing what was already there. I'm just done pretending it doesn't hurt." For a second, something cracked in his expression. I saw the brother who used to sneak me extra dessert, who watched cartoons with me when our parents went out. Then the mask slid back into place. "You've always been dramatic," he said. "You could have had a seat at the table if you tried harder to fit in." There it was. The story I'd heard my whole life, boiled down into one sentence. If you're not comfortable, it's because you're wrong, not the room. "Tried harder?" I repeated, almost laughing. "I bent myself into shapes you never had to think about. You got praised for breathing. I got called too much for existing." Someone in the back clapped once sharply, then another. Soon, a small wave of applause rolled through the room, hesitant but real. Ethan's face flushed, the tips of his ears turning red. He wasn't used to losing control of the narrative. "Not here. Not in front of these people." "You know what?" he said tightly. "Enjoy your little rebellion, Liv. But when this is over, you're still going to be the one who burned the bridge." "Maybe the bridge needed burning," Jenna said from behind me, stepping forward. She hadn't spoken yet, but now her voice cut through the room like a clean break. "Sometimes you don't realize how far you've been kept from the table until someone lights it up." Ethan glared at her, then at me, then at the crowd that wasn't rallying to his defense the way he'd expected. "Don't expect them to pick you over a lifetime of family," he muttered. But as he turned away, I noticed something that made my heart stutter. Some of the relatives who'd arrived with him didn't follow. They stayed where they were, drinks in hand, eyes on me. Maybe family didn't mean what he thought it did anymore. The music crept back in after Ethan's exit, but the atmosphere had changed. It felt sharper, charged, like everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Was this just a dramatic moment in a fun night, or the point where our family's story bent in a different direction? Jenna leaned in and whispered, "We're not done yet. You still have that email, right?" My stomach tightened. The email. 2 weeks before all this, I'd been at my parents' house helping Linda pick out a photo for the holiday card. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, and an email thread subject line had caught my eye. "Anniversary final guest list." I hadn't meant to snoop, but my own name glowing on the screen, and then literally crossed out in a reply from Ethan, had frozen me in place. "Honestly, Mom, inviting Olivia will just make things tense," he'd written. "Let's keep it simple. Immediate family only." Followed by a smiley face. Linda's response. "You're probably right. She says she doesn't like these things anyway." I'd quietly forwarded the thread to myself, then spent days wondering if keeping it was paranoid or necessary. Now, standing in a loft full of people who had lived the same pattern of erasure in smaller, quieter ways, I knew my answer. "Yeah," I said slowly, "I still have it." Jenna hopped up onto a chair and clapped her hands. "Okay, everyone, quick pause," she called out. The room quieted. "Our host has something to say." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I swallowed, feeling my throat go dry. Microphone or not, it felt like I was standing on a stage. I didn't bring you all here just to have a second-rate version of what's happening next door, I began, my voice shaking at first. I brought you here because we've all, in different ways, been told we don't belong in the official version of this family. Heads nodded around the room. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and cast the screen to the projector we'd rented for party games. The email thread popped up, blown huge on the brick wall behind me. You could see everything. Subject line, my name on the list, the reply where it was crossed out, the casual justification. A low collective murmur rippled through the room. A few people gasped. Tara covered her mouth. This, I said softly, is how I learned I wasn't invited. Not by accident. Not because they forgot. Because my own brother suggested I'd ruin the vibe. The words felt raw leaving my mouth, but also precise, like a knife finally cutting through layers of fog. And the thing that hurts most isn't even that decision, I continued. It's that for years, when any of us noticed we were being pushed out, we were told we were too sensitive, too dramatic, ungrateful. But this isn't a misunderstanding, it's a choice. Have you ever seen proof of the story you've felt your whole life, written out in plain text for everyone to see? It's validating and sickening and strangely freeing, all at once. Someone in the back spoke up. They told me you didn't want to come anymore, an older cousin said. They said you preferred your independent life. They said that about me too, another relative added. That I was too busy. That I probably wouldn't show anyway. Same, Tara said. I stopped getting invites and told myself it was just an oversight. Deep down, I knew it wasn't. A heavy silence followed, broken only by the muffled thump of distant music from the hotel. I took a breath. I'm not showing you this to make you hate them, I said. I'm showing you because I'm done gaslighting myself into believing I imagined it. This is what's been happening. To me. To you. And tonight is the first time I've ever felt like we had the power to choose something different. Jenna jumped back in. So, here's the deal, she said, grin returning. No one's locking the doors. No one's keeping score. But I am curious. Since there are two parties happening tonight, which one do you actually want to be at? The one where you feel like a prop? Or the one where you're actually seen? She didn't ask them to raise their hands. She didn't need to. The answer came in movement. People pulled out their phones and texted whoever was still at the hotel. Come upstairs. You're at the wrong party. Trust me. A few who had been on the fence, still clinging to the idea that they should go back downstairs to be polite, slipped their jackets off and set them on chairs as if to say, I'm staying. In that moment, Ethan reappeared at the doorway, his expression stormy. Behind him, I could see the faint glow of the hotel hallway, the edge of a sign pointing toward Ballroom A, Brooke's anniversary. What the hell are you doing? He hissed, striding toward me. Mom is sobbing. Dad just found out half the dessert course is untouched because people keep disappearing. You projecting private emails on a wall now? Private? I repeated, heart pounding but voice steady. You decided my place in the family in that email. I think I get to decide whether I keep it to myself. His gaze flicked to the screen, then to the faces in the room. He suddenly looked smaller, suit and all, like his authority had shrunk to fit the actual size of his choices. You're ruining their night, he said. No, Uncle Mark cut in. They ruined a lot of our nights long before this. Tonight we're just finally talking about it. Tara turned to Ethan, eyes bright with anger. Did you ever wonder why I stopped coming around after college? She asked. It's because every time I did, I felt like I was being graded next to you. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. This was his nightmare. A room he couldn't control with charm or credentials. A story that didn't frame him as the reliable hero. In the back, someone laughed. Not at him, but at the absurdity of everything. The tension cracked. Jenna raised her plastic cup. "To the uninvited," she declared. "To the uninvited," the room echoed back. Ethan stood frozen, watching as the people he'd assumed were his built-in audience turned their bodies toward me instead. For once, the spotlight wasn't his, and he had no idea how to stand in the dark. I didn't have long to savor the shift. 10 minutes after Ethan stormed out again, the elevator dinged one more time. The room quieted. Every conversation chopped mid-sentence as the doors slid open. Richard and Linda Brooks stepped into the loft like they were entering a courtroom. My father's jaw was set so tight I could see the muscle ticking. My mother's makeup was smudged just enough to suggest tears, but her posture was still practiced, chin high, eyes scanning for witnesses. Behind them, a few hotel staff lurked uncertainly, as if they'd been dragged into a family play they didn't have tickets for. For a heartbeat, no one moved. This was the collision course I'd imagined, but no daydream had prepared me for the real thing. My parents standing in the middle of a party I had built without them, surrounded by people they'd quietly pushed away. "Olivia," my father said finally, his voice louder than the music. "What have you done?" It wasn't curiosity, it was accusation. Years of being the problem wrapped into 3 words. My hands shook, but I didn't step back. "I threw a party," I said. "You might remember the concept." A nervous chuckle escaped from somewhere in the crowd. My mother winced, then turned slowly, taking in the photos on the wall, the warm chaos, the faces of relatives she hadn't spoken to properly in ages. When her gaze landed on the projected email still faintly glowing on the brick, she flinched like she'd been slapped. "You had no right to show that," she said. "That was a private discussion." "Private decisions have public consequences," I replied, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. "That email is the reason I wasn't downstairs tonight. It's the reason a lot of people aren't." Richard's eyes narrowed. "This is our anniversary," he said. 35 years. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to have guests slipping away to this?" He gestured dismissively at the room. "To some grievance party? You mean how humiliating it's been for years to watch you pretend we're all one big happy family, while half of us slowly go missing from the photos." Uncle Mark cut in calmly. "Welcome to the other side of your guest list, Richard." Linda's voice trembled. "We did the best we could," she protested. "We invited the people who support us, who show up, who don't bring drama." The word drama landed like a stone. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Right. Because nothing says no drama like quietly crossing your daughter's name off an invitation and hoping she'll be too polite to make a scene." Her eyes flashed. "You've always been difficult, Olivia," she said. "Sensitive. You make everything about you. Have you ever heard someone summarize your whole life in a way that erases every time you swallowed your feelings just to keep the peace? It's like watching yourself be miscast in a role you never auditioned for." I took a breath so deep it hurt. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I spent years trying not to make anything about me. Skipping events so you wouldn't have to worry about me being awkward. Shrinking myself so Ethan could shine. Telling myself it was fine when my work, my relationships, my milestones got turned into background noise. And when I finally do something on my own terms, you call it drama." For the first time, something like doubt flickered in my mother's eyes. "That's not fair," she whispered. "We've always loved you." "Loving someone and seeing them aren't the same thing," I replied. "You talk about supporting the kids who show up. I did show up. You just didn't notice because I wasn't wearing a suit and shaking hands with your clients." Tara stepped forward, voice shaking but clear. "They did the same thing to me," she said. It just hurt less because I'm not their kid. Do you know what it's like to sit at home wondering what you did wrong, only to find out your invite got lost for the third time? Another relative added quietly. They told me Olivia didn't like family events. That's why she wasn't there. The room tightened around my parents like a circle closing. The hotel staff slipped out, sensing this wasn't their scene. Out the window, the hotel's facade seemed oddly small now, just another building on the block. My father drew himself up. We can't control every misunderstanding, he said. We built a life, a business. We had to prioritize stability. Ethan always made it easy. He trailed off. I what? I pressed. Didn't fit the brand? He didn't deny it, and that somehow hurt more than if he'd shouted. Jenna stepped in, not aggressively, just firmly. You know what's really unstable? She said. Teaching your kids that love is conditional on how well they perform for other people. That's not stability. That's stage fright. For once, Linda had no ready response. Her gaze drifted to the photos on the wall, of me and Tara laughing, of younger versions of all of us in t-shirts and messy hair. Her fingers trembled as she reached out and touched one. Me at 14, paint smudged on my cheek, holding up a sketchbook, eyes shining. I remember this day, she murmured. You were so excited. We had to leave early for Ethan's debate tournament. She closed her eyes briefly. You begged us to stay. You told me I was being selfish, I said, that we had to support his future. The silence after that was heavy. You could feel everyone in the room stacking their own memories next to mine, building a quiet mountain of, we had to support him. Finally, my mother looked up, and for the first time that night, her mask slipped completely. I thought you were strong enough not to need as much, she said, voice cracking. You always seemed fine. I wasn't, I answered. I just learned early that telling you I wasn't didn't change anything. Richard scrubbed a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than he had at the hotel entrance. So what now? He asked, not in accusation this time, but in something closer to exhaustion. You've made your point. The whole family's seen it. What do you want, Olivia? An apology? For us to cancel the rest of the night? My throat tightened. What did I want? For them to feel every ounce of hurt I'd carried? For them to never host another party without thinking of this one? For them to, somehow, magically, go back in time and rewrite years of choices? I want you to admit it, I said slowly. Out loud. Not just to me in a hallway, but to everyone, that this wasn't in my head. That you favored Ethan, that you left people out to protect your image, that it was wrong. The room held its breath. This was the real revenge, I realized. Not the loft, not the rival party, but forcing the truth into the open where it couldn't be edited or cropped. My father looked at my mother. She looked back at him. For 35 years, they'd been a united front. Maybe this was the first crack. Linda swallowed, then stepped closer to the center of the room. We did favor him, she said, each word feeling like it cost her. We thought putting our energy behind the child who fit the mold made sense. We told ourselves you were okay. We told ourselves the others would understand. We were wrong. Richard nodded stiffly. We were wrong, he echoed. And if tonight is any indication, we've been wrong for a long time. The admission didn't undo anything. It didn't magically rewind years of holiday photos where I was missing from the frame. But it did something I hadn't expected. It shifted the weight. It wasn't all on me anymore. The story, finally, belonged to everyone in the room. After my parents' confession, the room didn't erupt into cheering. It didn't dissolve into a group hug either. It just breathed. People shifted, shoulders dropping, tension loosening a fraction. The truth was out, and like most truths, It sat somewhere between satisfying and deeply sad. Out the window, I noticed something. The hotel entrance was quiet. No new guests arriving, no clusters of people in formal wear chatting on the sidewalk. Later, I'd find out that word had spread faster than any of us realized. A cousin had quietly live-streamed part of the loft confrontation to a private family group. Someone else had posted a photo of our packed, laughing party with the caption, "The real Brooks reunion is upstairs." By dessert, half the hotel ballroom was empty. The carefully arranged place cards my parents had agonized over sat abandoned next to untouched slices of cake. The manager of the Lakeshore Grand, furious about the optics, had pulled my father aside to talk about contract expectations and future partnerships. My mother's real estate clients, who had come to network as much as celebrate, had watched, wide-eyed, as their host's family walked out on them. Ethan, meanwhile, wasn't just embarrassed in front of relatives. The email screenshot had been sent to a few of his colleagues who were still at the hotel bar, and someone made a quietly brutal comment about how you treat people when you don't think they're important says more about you than your resume. Choices have consequences, even for golden children. Back in the loft, the music slowly started up again. People drifted into smaller groups, talking in low voices, some reminiscing, some venting, some just existing together in a way we hadn't in years. My parents didn't leave immediately. Linda sat down heavily in one of the folding chairs, the same kind she'd once sniffed at for being too cheap for a proper event, and watched as Tara and a few others took silly photos in front of the sheet we'd hung. Richard stood against the wall for a long time, hands in his pockets, absorbing the photos, the email still faintly glowing, the way people gravitated toward me. Eventually, he approached. "You did all this in a week?" he asked quietly. There was no accusation in it, just something like wonder. "With help," I said. "Jenna, Tara, the people you forgot to count." He nodded slowly. "You're good at this," he said. "Organizing people. Creating something that feels real." Part of me wanted to snap back. "I've always been good at things. You just never asked what they were." Instead, I said, "I didn't do it to prove a point about my skills. I did it because I was tired of pretending I didn't care." He looked at me for a long moment. "I know it doesn't fix anything," he said, "but I am sorry, Olivia. Not just for tonight, for the pattern, for making you feel like there wasn't room for you at our table." I believed him mostly. He wasn't a villain in a movie. He was a man who'd convinced himself that prioritizing this shiny child was practical, not cruel. Linda joined us, eyes still red. "I don't know how to undo what we've done," she admitted. "But I don't want this to be the story that defines us forever. If you're willing, I'd like us to try again. Differently. With less branding." I didn't give them an easy answer. Revenge stories feel good when the bad guy gets exactly what they deserve in a neat, final blow. Real life is messier. "I'm willing to try," I said slowly, "if trying means more than a couple of guilty phone calls and one extra invite. It means therapy. Honest conversations, actually listening when I say something hurts. It means not just squeezing me into the photo, but changing the way you see the family in the first place." They both nodded, looking simultaneously relieved and terrified. "We'll start," Linda said, "if you'll let us." I didn't forgive them on the spot, but I let them sit in the loft a while longer, watching the party they hadn't planned, surrounded by people they'd underestimated. That was part of their price too, not just public embarrassment, but being forced to witness the life that had grown in the shadow of their choices. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and people hugged me goodbye, Tara squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said, "for doing what I never had the guts to do, for saying it out loud. Jenna flopped down next to me on the floor, legs stretched out, gaze on the twinkling lights we'd strung ourselves. "You know this is going to be one of those stories people tell for years, right?" she said. "Remember the night Olivia threw a party upstairs and broke the Brooks mythology in half?" I laughed, exhausted and raw and weirdly light. "Let them tell it," I said. "Maybe the next kid who feels invisible in their own family will hear it and realize they're not crazy for wanting more." I thought about the hook that had started this whole thing. My brother mocking me over a missing place card. In the end, the missing place card became the least important part of the story. What mattered was that I stopped waiting for permission to show up. I claimed my own room, my own night, my own version of family. And the people who needed it most found their way to it. As I stood up to give one last toast, I looked around at the faces still there. The overlooked, the underestimated, the ones who'd quietly left the official party behind. To everyone who's ever been told they're too much or not enough for their own family, I said, my voice carrying through the loft. May you find rooms where you don't have to shrink or perform just to be loved. Blood is not the only thing that makes a family. Respect does. Choice does. Showing up does. Glasses clinked. Someone whooped. Somewhere below us, the hotel staff stacked empty chairs in a half-cleared ballroom, cleaning up a party that would be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Ours, I suspected, would be remembered for all the right ones. And now I can't help wondering. And I'm asking you too. Have you ever forgiven your family after they finally admitted the damage they caused? Or did you have to build a whole new definition of family for yourself?